Why you can't stop thinking. The Buddha's secret to your mind's nature. We've talked a lot in the past about how the three types of fabrication, bodily, verbal, and mental, play a role in shaping our experience. Recently, though, I read a weird piece by a scholar saying that these three kinds of fabrication apply only to meditation, as if they didn't apply to the rest of your life. But of course, the mind that's meditating is the same mind that goes out and deals with the world. And it's precisely because these same processes shape our experience in the ordinary, everyday world as they do in meditation, that the meditation is really a good tool for getting to understand how your mind creates suffering. That's what the Four Noble Truths are all about. It's not that life is suffering, it's that we create suffering in our clinging. The source of the suffering is not outside, it's what we do as we approach experience, as we create our experience out of the raw materials that come from our past karma and then cling to it. This applies to experience both in meditation and out. So, as you're getting to know the mind in meditation, you're also getting to know the mind in everyday life. As you put concentration together, start with the breath. Try to breathe in a way that feels good and nourishing, restful if you're feeling tense, energizing if you're feeling tired. Then talk to yourself. That's what verbal fabrication is. Talk to yourself about how the breath is doing, what you might do to make it better, and, when it's pleasant, what you might do to let that sensation of pleasant breathing spread around. Talk to yourself also about what perceptions to hold in mind as you do this. The perceptions and feelings are mental fabrications. Perceptions are the labels you apply to things or the images you hold in mind. What kind of image of the breath is helpful for concentration? Think of the breath as energy flowing through the body. It can flow through the nerves and blood vessels. You might try visualizing an image of the nerves or of your blood vessels and the whole circulatory system, spreading out to the little pores of the skin, with the breath energy suffusing that whole intricate system. Then there are feelings. You've got a feeling that's easeful. Well, what do you do with it? Do something with it that makes it nice to stay here. As the sense of breath flows through the body, think of the sense of ease flowing together with it. Think of your awareness extending out through the whole body, covering the whole range of the breath and the feeling. That's how you put concentration together. Then, whatever comes up, you can talk to yourself about how to deal with your distractions. With some distractions, all you have to do is note them, and you can go back to the breath. No big deal. Those are the distractions without much of a hook. They just seem to be churned up randomly. But there are others that have hooks and can be pretty tenacious. Those are the cases where you have to look at the drawbacks of that kind of thinking. Here the Buddha gives you another mental fabrication, a perception, to hold in mind. That you've got the carcass of a dead snake or a dead dog around your neck and you want to get rid of it. Learn to look at your distracting thoughts like dead dogs or dead snakes hanging around your neck. Don't let yourself see them as interesting or enticing or worth thinking about. When you do that, the contemplation of the drawbacks will have a chance to work. You also have to see the allure of the distractions. Why do you like to go for them to begin with? Sometimes you don't see the allure until you tell yourself, "I'm just not going to think that thought." The mind will then come up with a reason for wanting to think it. Sometimes it'll be a verbal fabrication, sometimes a mental fabrication. This is how the mind creates distractions to begin with. This is how it operates as you go through the world. You're beginning to see that. And the Buddha's giving you new tools to use against that. This is why there are so many analogies in the canon. New ways of perceiving or different ways of perceiving from what you ordinarily do. Most of us don't think of lustful thoughts as a dead snake or a dead dog, but that's a good image to hold in mind, not only with thoughts of lust, but also with thoughts of anger or anxiety. Perceive them as something disgusting that you really do want to get rid of. Once you can get your mind on the side of the Dhamma in this way, that's half the battle right there. Because there's a large part of the mind that says, I don't want to give up my lust or my anger or whatever. These have been my defenses. These have been my ways of finding entertainment in the past. Again, more verbal fabrication. So you need verbal fabrication to fight it. Or thoughts just seem to be running random and unstoppable. In that case, you can tell yourself, okay, I'll just let them be there, but I'm not going to get involved. Here are the images of a person closing his eyes. The distractions are there, but you don't have to look at them. You look away. You've got the breath. Thoughts don't destroy the breath, and they're not why you're here to begin with. Focus in on the breath, and, for the time being, let the thoughts have whatever corner of the mind they're going to occupy. What you're learning is how to use these processes of bodily, verbal, and mental fabrication to fight your old ways of using bodily, verbal, and mental fabrication. You may notice that when you're thinking about something, there's going to be tension in part of the body. Well, breathe through that. You can use your bodily fabrication there. There are lots of ways that you can think to yourself, talk to yourself, or bring to mind images to counteract the ones you've been hanging around with all along, because these forms of fabrication are all karma. That was another weird point in that scholar's article. He talked about how fabrication in the 5 aggregates, which he claimed was something different from the 3 types of fabrication, is not really karmic. It's just the result of old karma, but doesn't create any new karma. But if it's not karmic, what are you doing? The way you look at things, the way you think about things, is going to incline your mind in their direction. If you have old ways of looking and don't change them, your mind gets stuck in big ruts. Of course it's going to have karmic consequences. So, you've got this power here, the power of choice, the power of intentional action. As we're meditating, we're learning how to use this power well, learning how to divide things up so that we can get a handle on what the mind is doing. When you get the mind in a state of concentration like this, you can fight off the distractions. You begin to see that you're engaging in these kinds of fabrication all the time. Emotions are a big example of that. Different emotions will employ different ways of breathing along with different ways of talking to yourself. You can breathe in a way that exacerbates anger, or you can breathe in a way that stills it. You can talk to yourself in a way that excites anger, but you can also talk to yourself in a way that diffuses it. The same holds true with your perceptions. All too often, we're not just waiting for something outside to happen before we suddenly think thoughts of anger. Actually, we're often out there looking for something to get angry about, when, for example, we feel that anger is our protection, or that we can ward off danger by finding fault with things before they can do us harm. There are a lot of ways we talk ourselves into wanting to be angry or wanting to be lustful. We've got to learn how to look at these emotions in a different way, use different images in the mind, use different ways of talking to ourselves to counteract our old images and inner conversations. So as you're getting the mind into concentration, you're not just resting. You're getting hands-on experience in how you shape a state of mind. Then you can use that same knowledge to look at the other states of mind, emotions, and other distractions, both while you meditate and as you go through the day. In particular, look at the way the mind talks to itself. There's one kind of clinging the Buddha calls clinging to habits and practices. Many people interpret that simply as a matter of holding on to rules, petty rules and petty rituals. But it's not just that. It's your idea that I've got to think in this way or I've got to act in this way, and if I don't do that, something really bad is going to happen, even though those ideas about how you have to think and act are actually causing you trouble. There's a sense of ought in a lot of our clinging. It's not just pure lust or pure desire. Sometimes we tell ourselves, this is the way it's got to be. Then we get ourselves into trouble and wonder why we're suffering. That's verbal fabrication. So, learn how to question these things. And you do that first by mastering an alternative skill, using fabrications as you meditate in a skillful way. Once you know how to fabricate in a skillful way, why go back to your old ways? What keeps pulling you back? The fact that you've got this alternative skill gives you a perspective you wouldn't have acquired otherwise. It also gives you a good place to stand as you're taking apart your old habits. So, see the importance of fabricating a state of concentration and maintaining it. Again, the issue of talking to yourself is going to be important. Sometimes you tell yourself, "My mind is in concentration and nothing is happening. What can I make happen?" An important part of the concentration is learning to be patient when things don't seem to be happening. It's not the case that you get the mind into concentration and immediately move on to the next stage. Sometimes you have to stay right here because things in the mind don't necessarily show themselves right away. You have to learn how to content yourself. See the concentration as a skill that you're willing to take time to develop, and take some pride in your workmanship. It's like sharpening a knife. When I was in Thailand, we didn't have electric knife sharpeners where you can go zip, zip, and the knife is sharp. They had a big stone and some water. That was it. You had to rub the knife, usually a machete, against the stone, and wet the stone every now and then to make sure it didn't dry out. And you had to talk to yourself while you were doing this, so that you maintained your alertness and didn't get bored. After all, when you're doing something like that, you don't want to sharpen some parts of the blade too much, because that would spoil the blade. There has to be an evenness to your effort, a consistency. You have to learn how to give yourself pep talks all along the way. Otherwise, as your mind wanders off someplace else, you find you've ruined the blade. So, you stay on top of things, and then you talk to yourself just enough to keep yourself content with staying on top of things right there. It'll take a while, but if you stick with it, you get a good, sharp blade. The same with concentration. Sometimes you sit here and ask yourself, where's the entertainment? Where are the lights? Where are the cameras? Where's the action? You have to tell yourself, nope, this is it. After all, where was the Buddha on the night of his awakening? His mind was in the fourth jhana, the mind right there at the breath, very quiet. Yet he was able to see what was going on in his mind, going on in his breath, in a way that led to awakening. So, once the mind settles down, you're at the right spot. The question is simply learning how to look at this spot with more care from the right angle. In the beginning stages, it's a matter of learning how to be content just being here. This requires more verbal fabrication, mental fabrication, and bodily fabrication that not only get you into concentration, but also keep you here. You learn how to keep yourself happy to be here, to fight off thoughts that say, "This is boring." Again, what is that thought? It's a verbal fabrication. Well, you can also use other verbal fabrications that say, "Who cares if it's boring? I'm here doing something I haven't done before," making the mind really consistent in its concentration. I haven't yet seen the full potential of these states, so I'm going to stick with it until I do. As long as you're going to fabricate your experience, you might as well do it well. When you really learn how to do it well, that's how you learn how not to fabricate anything at all. That's a stage that comes with practice. But where's the practice going to happen? It's going to happen right here, as you're fabricating your state of concentration, as you're breathing, as you're talking to yourself, as you're using different perceptions and making use of your feelings of pleasure here. It's in doing these things that you gain your insight. Dogen has a nice passage where he says that the duty with regard to the third noble truth is to realize it. The duty with regard to the fourth noble truth is to develop it. And those two duties are basically the same thing. As you're developing the path, the goal appears. He's not saying that the path is the goal. He's saying that the process of paying full attention to developing the path is where you're going to realize the goal, the cessation of suffering. It's all right here. It's just a question of learning how to be content to stay right here and to be stable enough right here so that you can really see what's happening right here. So, you're at the right spot. Just learn how to fabricate it well. Because the mind is purposeful. Meditation involves two things. One is getting the mind to be still, and the other is gaining insight into its processes. We can do the two together. The Buddha talks about the process of what he calls Saṅkhāra, which we translate as fabrication. As he points out, we fabricate all kinds of things. We fabricate our sense of the body, our feelings, our perceptions, and our thought constructs. Even our consciousness has an element of intention. Of course, we don't fabricate these things out of nothing. We start with raw material, the potentials coming in from our past karma. And then, for the sake of having an experience of the present moment, we put these things together. Notice that for the sake of this fabrication, these processes of intention aim at something. They're motivated by desire, and although we may hear a lot of negative things about desire in meditation circles, the Buddha had some positive things to say about it as well. We can take this motive force inside the mind and use it to put together the path. All of the path, the Buddha said, is fabricated. Concentration, the heart of the path, is something fabricated, and that means it requires desire, the desire to get the mind focused and to settle down. So you use these processes, you use this movement of the mind that's always for the sake of something, and you direct it to be for the sake of the path. So observe yourself as you settle down with the breath. Focus on wanting to be with the breath. This is one of the proper uses of desire. You want the mind to settle down, but you don't focus directly on the mind, and you don't focus on thoughts of settling down. You focus on the breath, because you know that if you can stay with the breath, it'll get you where you want to go. You focus on assembling the causes, and the results will take care of themselves. So pay full attention to the breath. If you find the mind slipping off, just keep coming back. Try to breathe in a way that feels good, relaxing when you're feeling tense, energizing when you're feeling tired. Think of the breath as a whole body process. It's not just the air coming in and out through the nose. That's just the result of the breathing. The breathing is the energy that goes through the movement of the muscles, the impulses in the nerves and in the blood vessels. If you're really sensitive, you can sense these energies anywhere in the body. But notice where they're most prominent right now and allow your attention to settle there. And keep after this. Other thoughts will come in, and you have to tell yourself, no, not right now. Got more important work right here. The mind has spent so much time thinking about random things and about other things that are not quite so random but still scatter you about. But now, you're going to devote its thinking and all of its processes to getting it to settle down. A large part of that strategy lies in making the breath an attractive place to be. That way, when you wander off, the idea of coming back is attractive. You want to come back. If you wander off again, you want to come back again. Each time you come back, reward yourself with a breath that feels especially gratifying. Think of the breath as being all around you, so that you're not just in one side of the body looking at the breath in another part of the body. You've got the breath all around you, surrounding you, bathing you. As for any other thoughts, any other responsibilities you may have right now, you don't have to think about them. You'll come back to them some other time, but not right now. You want to honor your original intention, which is to get the mind still with the breath so that it can see itself clearly. A lot of what it'll see is this process of fabrication. We're fabricating a state of concentration. That's the best way to get to know fabrication, by doing something skillful with it. It's like learning about wood. When you make different pieces of furniture out of wood, you learn its characteristics, how the different kinds of wood respond to being planed, how they respond to being sawed. You learn this because you want to use the wood for the sake of something. If you just sat and stared at the wood, you wouldn't learn much. But when you make things out of it, you learn a lot about its peculiarities, its qualities, what kind of wood is good for what kind of object. The same with fabrication. This process of for the sake of something. You devote all your efforts for the sake of getting the mind to settle down in a state of being not only still, but also very clear, very alert. The Buddha recommends 3 qualities to work with the breath. 1 is mindfulness, the ability to keep something in mind. In this case, you keep in mind the fact that you want to stay here. If you've meditated before, you want to keep in mind what techniques have worked in the past and what techniques have not, so that if you find yourself slipping into something unskillful, you can do something about it. This is where the other 2 qualities come in. Alertness, watching what you're doing, and ardency, wanting to do this well. The ardency is the discernment factor here. You're ardent with a purpose, trying to do this as skillfully as you can. That's the kind of discernment we're after. Practical, pragmatic, purposeful. John Lee points to ardency as the discernment factor in mindfulness practice for several reasons. One is that, out of these 3 factors, ardency is what makes the others right. After all, you can be mindful about anything. You can keep anything in mind. Last year's baseball scores, things at work, past desires that you could dig up again. Here you've got a whole hour. You could fill the hour with sensual fantasies if you wanted to, but you realize that that would be a waste. Why do you realize that it would be a waste? Because of the ardency. And you're ardent because you have another purpose in being here. The same with alertness. You could listen to the sound of the crickets. You could listen to the sound of the planes, the sound of the dogs off in the distance. But what would that accomplish? Nothing much. But if you're alert to what you're actually doing and the results you're getting, you're going to learn something useful. Here again, ardency. This is a wise use of your mindfulness, a wise use of your alertness. And here again, you see the whole point of doing something with a purpose. When you understand these processes of fabrication as you do them skillfully, that helps you understand them when you're doing them unskillfully. When you're giving in to desires that actually would be harmful to you, either you would gain what you wanted, but it would involve harm or would disappoint you, or you wouldn't get what you wanted at all. That's one of the prime causes of aversion. It's because we're constantly doing something for the sake of something that aversion arises, because our purposes are thwarted. You could think of all the things that are happening in the world right now, but there are a lot of areas in the world where you have no particular desire that things turn out one way or another, so you can read the news about those places and be pretty equanimous. But if the news goes against your desires, you're going to get averse. It's amazing how many desires we have for things that have little bearing on what we can actually accomplish or influence. We may want justice all over the world, and then when you see injustice anywhere, it can get you upset. Fear can also be explained in this way. We're attached to certain things and we're afraid that something will come along and destroy what we have or what we want to have. So if you want to understand your fears, look for your attachments. To understand your aversion, look for your desires, realizing that sometimes it's not simply a case of thwarted desire leading to aversion. There's also the possibility that you desire the aversion itself. But when you see how to use the processes of fabrication to put together a good state of concentration, and you have a sense that you can point this process of fabrication in different directions, then when you start seeing the drawbacks of your unskillful desires or your aversion, you know that you could fabricate things in a different way. Here again, breath meditation is really helpful. The Buddha talks about 3 kinds of fabrication. There's bodily fabrication, the breath; verbal fabrication, the way you talk to yourself. In technical terms, it's directed thought and evaluation. And then mental fabrication, perceptions, the labels you put on things. And then feelings, feeling tones of pleasure, pain, neither pleasure nor pain. As you're working with the breath, getting the mind to settle down, you're getting hands-on experience with all 3 of these kinds of fabrication. The perceptions, for instance, that you have of the breath as a whole body process, the feelings of ease, Refreshment you can create by the way you talk to yourself about how you breathe, evaluating how it's going, and making changes as you see fit. When you can create a state of concentration through these processes, you look at your other, more unskillful ways of engaging in them, and you realize that you could change. You don't have to follow your old ways. You can question the desires, say, that give rise to aversion, and you can question the desires that give rise to fear. A lot of these desires seem natural because they're habitual. You've given in to them many times before, but it's good to see that they're artificial. This is why we use the word fabrication to translate Saṅkhāra, to get a sense of how things are put together in a certain way, jerry-rigged in a certain way, but they don't have to be that way, especially if they're not skillful. It's in this way that getting the mind still can start bringing about insight into these processes of fabrication. And that's precisely how insight is defined, learning how to view fabrications in a way that gives rise to dispassion for the whole process. So instead of pretending that you're just observing things as they are, ignoring the fact that you're actually putting them together, an attitude that doesn't lead to much in terms of genuine insight, be clear about the fact that you're putting things together. And right now you want to put together a state of stillness, ease, refreshment. The potentials are right here. Look carefully, experiment, and you'll find them. As you find them and devote them to the right purpose, you gain not only tranquility, but also the beginnings of insight. They work in tandem in this way. For the sake of the deathless. I was reading recently about a conflict between two famous philosophers in America back in the late 19th century, early 20th century, over why you would do philosophy. One of them said that the purpose was to arrive at knowledge, and the other one said, "What good is knowledge if it doesn't tell you what to do?" Of course, from the Buddha's point of view, both of them are wrong. From his point of view, what good is knowledge if it doesn't lead to happiness? What good is action if it doesn't lead to happiness? A happiness that you can really rely on. You have to remember that's what the Dhamma is all about. Its purpose, its attha, is to find a happiness that you can rely on. As the Buddha noted, the way the mind puts things together always has to have a purpose. There's a passage where he defines the different aggregates as verbs. Even form deforms. We know form through its activities. And fabrication fabricates all the aggregates for a purpose, for the sake of something. And as the Buddha saw rightly, it's for the sake of happiness. The thing is, we have to keep on fabricating because the happiness we've gained from our activities in the past lasts for a little while and then goes away. So we have to keep making more and more and more. The Buddha's question was, can you fabricate in such a way that you arrive at a happiness that doesn't disappoint, that's not going to change? At first blush, it sounds contradictory. If you try to fabricate a happiness that doesn't change, that's impossible because our fabrications all change. But what he discovered was that we fabricate a path. We make the path skillful. It's skillful in such a way that it arrives at the threshold of something that doesn't change. In other words, it delivers us there. It doesn't cause it. It's just like taking your car and driving down to San Diego. It doesn't cause San Diego, but the act of driving the car gets you there. That's what we're doing as we're meditating here. We're following a path and we have a purpose. Those people who like to claim that they meditate with no purpose at all, you wonder what kind of equation is going on in their minds. Why bother? We meditate because we make a difference by meditating. We meditate because we're trying to develop the skill that's needed. When the Buddha talked about his quest for awakening, he said it was both for something that didn't grow ill, didn't age, didn't die, was free from sorrow, lamentation, and all the other disappointments. And it was also for what was skillful. He was looking for what was skillful as a means to get to the deathless. So that's what we're working on here, trying to develop a skill that allows us, as the Buddha said, to see what we haven't seen before, to attain what we haven't attained before. So we're feeling our way. We do have a map, and it's a map that's just right. It doesn't have too much information. If the Buddha had tried to give all the information he gained in his awakening, the map would become unreadable. He gave us just enough to get us on the right course. But the path also requires that we look at ourselves, because the problem that this path overcomes is something that lies within each of us. You have to take care of what's inside you. If the Buddha could have taken care of it for you, he would have done it. He had a large heart like that. He wanted to help all beings, but he realized he couldn't. He could speak to us, give us messages, but then we have to look within ourselves to see, on the one hand, how we're creating the problem, and then on the other hand, what we can do to stop creating the problem. That frame of mind that acts for the sake of things is both part of the problem but also part of the solution. So again, it's not that we're here practicing without any goal. We have a very clear goal. We also have to look at our actions to see that each is for the sake of what? Why are we doing that? Sometimes we don't think of anything very far ahead, but just for the sake of pleasure right now. This is one of the mind's worst habits. It doesn't think about long-term consequences. It thinks about just the short term because it's hungry, and if it's not hungry enough, it can make itself hungry. That's a habit we have to learn to overcome. This is one of the reasons why the Buddha compared concentration to food. The different levels of jhana, he said, are like different grades of food. The highest, of course, is the fourth, which he says is like honey, ghee, and butter, really rich food. We learn to feed ourselves on this so that the part of the mind that likes to make you hungry will be stymied, and so that you can look more clearly at the choices you're making. It's when you're well fed that you can start thinking about the long term with some clarity. Then the long term has power over the mind. The Buddha said that one of the measures of discernment is when you see that something leads to a long-term harm, but it's something you'd like to do, you know how to talk yourself out of doing it. Or if you see something that leads to long-term benefit, but it's something you don't like to do, you talk yourself into wanting to do it. For that, it really helps if the mind feels well fed. Even though our goal is the deathless, what we're working on right now is food for the fabricated path that will take us there. Still, have the conviction in the back of your mind that yes, there is something deathless. The Buddha said there is. All the noble disciples have said he's right. But now we have to focus on the path to go there. It's like preparing for a trip. If you simply think about all the nice things you're going to do and see on the trip, but you don't pack your luggage or provisions properly, the trip isn't going to go very far and you're not going to see all those wonderful things you want to see. So focus right now on the breath for the purpose of knowledge, for the purpose of knowing what to do, both with the purpose of leading to the ultimate happiness. Have that purpose in the back of your mind. In the front of your mind, have the breath. Have the mind focusing its attention on the breath. Its alertness on what's going on right now with the breath. Bring that mindfulness to the fore, as the Buddha would say. Dogen once said that the duties with regard to the third and the fourth noble truths are basically the same. You develop the path, and in developing the path you realize awakening, you realize cessation of suffering. It's not someplace else. Some people have read this teaching as to mean that the path and the goal are the same, but that's not the case. It's in the doing of the path that you're also doing the duty of the third noble truth. So your focus right here, this breath coming in, this breath going out. Pay a lot of attention to the breath because it is your path, and you can make it as smooth as you want. This is probably one of the reasons why the Buddha recommended breath meditation more than anything else. Of the different elements of the body, it's the most responsive to your intentions right in the present moment. It shows you very clearly. If you hold this perception in mind, the breath will be one way. If you hold another perception in mind, the breath will be another way. Then you can judge which perception helps you settle down, which intention helps you settle down, and you can use that knowledge to develop concentration and to develop discernment. You start seeing the mind. You start seeing the fabrications of the mind. And in doing this very consciously, you dig up a lot of things that you do unconsciously that might resist. But it's only when you counteract them that they'll show themselves. Then you can figure out your way around them. So it's by paying very careful attention right here that you get to that goal that seems so far away. But you have to remember, when it's found, it's going to be found right here. This is apparently what the Buddha meant by saying it's touched with the body. We experience the body right now. That's where the deathless going to appear, so look very carefully right here. As you make settling down with the breath your purpose, you find that leads deeper and deeper to deeper purposes. So give this your full attention. This is the fullness of attention that leads to a sense of fullness of mind, and that gets you closer and closer to the goal.